Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another community update. Today is November 3rd, and we have a lot of exciting stuff we want to tell you about today. So, why don't we have Fix to come on and give a brief overview first, and then that would lead into me updating you on the marketing, and then we tell you a little bit about a feature that we know all of you are looking forward to, which is staking. So, take it away, Paul.
Hey everyone. So we posted into the Novusphere Meetup channel a few links to some animated GIFs that will kind of give you a preview of some of the features we've been trying to get working before we launch the beta. So the first link is just a demonstration of how the content
Infinite scrolling. Yep.
the content will infinitely scroll and appear as you scroll down. That's pretty cool. And then we've gotten notifications functioning, so we're the ability to be notified when under certain conditions. So when someone replies to your comment, or a top level comment is made in a thread that you've created. So there's a few options for that. So that should make it a lot easier to follow conversations within the forum, and that was one of the bigger features we wanted to add before to make discussions 2.0 worthwhile. So we're in general we're pretty close. We have a deployment that's supposed to happen either today or tomorrow that will add a bunch of features that we kind of set as our checklist for things that we want before we launch the beta. And assuming that everything is right with those, then we'll be we're eminently ready to get everyone's input. So watch this space. Will be I think over the next few days we'll have news on what date we're actually going to launch the beta. And then the kind of general idea is that the beta will launch with most of the functionality that Discussions 1 has. There's a couple key features we'll be adding as the beta progresses, and so one of those is going to be the moderation system is currently pretty simplistic. It will be fleshed out while we run the beta, and then the other aspect is you'll notice that with Discussions 2.0, the reliance on scatter is pretty much zero. So it is a system completely dependent on our own resources and our own technology. So we're not, it's very portable. But with that, we haven't quite built out the tipping functionality to the same degree. So that will be added during the beta as well. So yeah, that's kind of the game plan. And then we should know once we're into the beta by a week or two, kind of what it's going to take to actually launch Discussions 2.0 as a full release. So yeah, so we're getting pretty close on that stuff. Yeah, so why don't Jack, you take over and talk about some of the marketing stuff that's coming up and the kind of overall status of marketing, kind of in a general sense.
Yeah, for sure. So, sorry, change my mic setting. So yeah, for in terms of marketing, now that 2.0 release 2.0 is getting a little bit closer, we have been pretty quiet on the marketing front. We stopped hosting AMAs just because we weren't seeing those activities being able to kind of keep users coming back. So there's a lot of things in 2.0 that are going to do that in terms of notifications. In the future. Maybe a little bit further down, we're gonna have like email notifications if people choose to decide to give us email address so that we can send them reminders. But in anticipation to that build out, we are actually assembling a larger team of marketers or community builders in general. We are working with consultants to kind of polish our branding and kind of give us a more coherent marketing strategy from which we could build our marketing team on top of. So one of the things we are doing is we're gonna be hosting a web summit hackathon. Technically, I shouldn't call it web summit because web summit don't like it when people use their branding. But it's gonna be a hackathon that is gonna take place right at the end of web summit. Here in Lisbon, which is where I'm based. We're working in cooperation with The Block, which is a co-working space / cafe dedicated to blockchain technology. And we have really cool sponsors that are sponsoring this event. We have Fidelity, we have Ledger, the hardware wallet. We have local fintech companies are sponsoring the event. So it's going to be a good way for us to kind of reach out and build our reputation within the blockchain, the general blockchain community. And obviously, it being Web Summit, there's going to be a lot of very famous, very international groups that are going to be there, so we could expose our project to. So that's one of the things we're doing, and we're gonna have a heavier presence on social media in terms of marketing, in terms of running, promotions and events, and keeping the site active and exciting and lively. So all that's gonna come further on as we get closer and closer to the launch of 2.0. And you're gonna hear a lot more about it during the beta versions, during the release of beta of Discussion 2.0, which you should definitely go and test it out, and let us know of any bugs and features and that kind of thing you want to incorporate it when we fully launch the product. So yeah, that's all for marketing.
Exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Cool. So now we have a thing posted here in the Meetup channel. It's some text that was based off of a conversation that we've been having kind of ongoing about what the staking system would look like. And I know that this is something that's been on people's minds. When are we going to be able to do staking? What's staking going to be used for, etc. So one of the basic features that staking is going to provide is redundancy for the forum. So not having to rely on the EOS history nodes, which are prone to go down, things like that. So the stakers will run software that will essentially serve content that is important to the forum. In exchange, we have an initial subsidy created by funds that were not swapped during the swap to the EOS chain. So we have enough Atmos to subsidize the staking mechanism for several years. So there's it's going to be a very similar inflation rate as or I should say percentage as the initial chain, but there won't really technically be any inflation because this is just coming from reserves, not from a creation of any more tokens. But so one of the things that we talked about was how do we encourage people to stake and hold for long term, and maybe also give a reason for smaller holders to to stake and to have kind of a more give them a little bit of an advantage they wouldn't normally have. So this idea was sort of based off of the proposal that Dan Larimer made with these buckets of sort of higher earning interest for EOS that if you held it locked up for longer periods of time, you would get a higher yield. So we kind of went with this idea that we would have a staking system that you could have funds committed to the staking system for a longer period of time, and that would give you a higher weight. So we, in the text you can see that, if you were someone who had 1,000 Atmos that you staked for 100 days, you would receive the same reward as someone who staked over a day period 100,000 Atmos. So if they just staked for one day 100,000 Atmos, they would have the same weight as someone who was staking 1,000, but we're committing that 1,000 to be locked up for 100 days. So the idea here is that we want to be able to give people a way to make their Atmos. They may not own a ton, but we're trying to diversify the number of people who are running the staking software. That's kind of number one. We want the more people who do that, the more resilient the system is, the less centralized it is. And so if we have a lot of small holders, we want to encourage them to hold for the long term and to run the software, so they can kind of get a much better yield than they would normally in the old system. And then the other thing is that this gives people a reason to hold long term as this project develops, because we know that a lot of blockchain projects take a long time to really do anything, and obviously we've had this project has been going on for a long time, so this is one of those things that we want people in for the long haul. We're starting to, I think, get to a point where we're getting a lot of more interesting softwares coming out. The system's getting more developed. The team is growing, that kind of thing. So I think encouraging people to lock their Atmos up for a longer period of time will I think, draw more attention to the project. The fact that so much supply is locked up, and that's since we have a decent amount of funds available to subsidize this until we bring on the fee-based staking rewards. It should attract a lot of attention, I think. So that's sort of the overall. We'd like to get people's feedback. The text is in the Novusphere meetup. It kind of explains it in more detail than what I just went over. So people's thoughts on this. This isn't like set in stone or anything. This is just something that we've been batting around, and we had a really good discussion the other day, and this is sort of the result of that. Of that conversation. So.
Yeah, I think this staking system is very interesting, especially that kind of inspired by Dan, where, like you said, there's Dan's proposal for EOS is kind of breaking in different pools. That the longer you stake, the more reward you get. So I'm really excited about that. I for sure I'm gonna stake my Atmos because I don't have a whole lot, and the longer you have your token stake, and the more reward you get. So that way you don't have to have to compete with the whale for the reward. They can't just buy a bunch of tokens and stake it and kind of kick you out of the reward pool. You could still, if you're committed to the project, you could get these rewards, which I'm very excited about. On top of that, is there anything else to add?
No, I think that's kind of the major stuff we wanted to cover. We do have, as I said, we do have one more software deployment that we need to see how it turns out.
Yes.
And that's going to kind of determine when we do the announce the public beta is open. So I think that's if I were a betting man, I would say sometime before the end of next week we would be in that window.
I think it is. The internal beta we have running is looking really good, and the next one that's going to be pushed is going to be very functional. I would say have like close to maybe 70% of the function of the current website, minus the tipping.
But it looks a whole lot better.
It's a lot smoother, and the interface is a lot easier to use.
And it's faster.
We've been all just kind of, we've been shit posting on it and just to test it out. But it's been a joy to use, and a much better user experience than what we have compared to the current one.
Yeah, and I think the big thing to me is that it's fulfilling some of the goals we had, which was the reliance on EOS is really not there anymore. Like you don't need to have an account. We're not even putting the scatter interface in until later. So, that's going to be something that you do. After you've established your account, you can link your scatter, your EOS, or your other chains that we're going to be supporting. So I think that's getting off on the right foot with that, because I think that's really the end goal is to have a system that is more universal and therefore more resilient.
Like currently, it's a lot easier to onboard new users, especially people not inside the crypto community, because they don't need to hold on to an EOS or scatter account just to start off posting. You can just register using a brain key, and it's a lot easier.
Yeah, no external software to download. Obviously the only caveat is that we don't have a mobile interface yet, so that'll be built during the beta as well. It's another feature that will be our front end people will be working on. So
I think what you meant to say is we do have a mobile UI. We have a mock-up.
We don't have it. We don't have it deployed
functional
yet.
Yeah, exactly. So we're gonna be approaching this the same way when we launch Discussion 1.0. We're gonna focus on the desktop users first, just because not because of the limitations of scatter, which was the case before, just because that's what we all use mostly within the team. And so it's kind of that thing of eating your own dog food until we could get the desktop version as good as we would like it to be, like when we're using it. We're gonna focus our energy just on that for now.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, I think that's it. Again, tons of exciting stuff are happening. Keep an ear out for the beta. And definitely keep an ear out for when the staking is enabled, so you can earn your rewards as soon as it's open. You can stake your Atmos, and you can start getting those weighted rewards coming in. Again, the stake reward proposal is not finalized, so please leave your thoughts in the video if you're listening, or on the post. I'm gonna create a post on discussion on app, in which you can leave a comment, leave your suggestions. If we think it's a great suggestion, we'll definitely tip you some Atmos for your effort. So I think that's it. Novusphere team out.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
All right. Thank you guys for listening, and catch you next week.